dark, kindle the spark in me.
Hey everybody, welcome to our latest episode of Flicker. So we're taking a look at the Sermon on the Mount and what it means in our day-by-day life. Today's episode, I guess you could summarize in this one sentence. Nakedness isn't really the problem. But maybe that doesn't make sense on its own. So let's back up for a little bit. We've been in this section in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus will take the commandments, like the actual 10 commandments that Moses gave, and Jesus will give his interpretation. And the pattern, the formula goes something like this. You've heard that it was said, and he'll quote one of the commandments, but then Jesus goes, but I say to you this, and he'll either sharpen the commandment or heighten it or say, but this is what I think it actually means. And we saw last time, Jesus takes the commandment, you shall not murder, and goes, okay, yeah, don't kill anybody, but actually something's gone terribly wrong a whole lot before you even get to killing anybody. The moment I let hatred into my heart, the moment I let myself get infected by anger and wrath and bitterness toward somebody else, so that even when I'm insulting somebody else, even when I'm being cruel or rude to somebody else, already something's gone wrong that puts me on the path toward murdering somebody else. Obviously, the consequences of murder are worse than insulting somebody, but Jesus says you really want to know what God's will is that we not be hateful and angry and wrathful toward each other. So similarly, Jesus takes the next of the commandment. Jesus takes the commandment about adultery, and so brief disclaimer, this is a little bit of a PG-13 kind of a conversation. Jesus says when you cheat on somebody, when you cheat on your spouse, you're breaking God's commandment, right? The commandment goes, you shall not commit murder. But Jesus adds, but I say to you, anybody who looks at a woman lustfully has committed adultery with her in his heart. And then goes on to say, honestly, it would be a whole lot better if your eye is going to lead you to stumble, it'd be better to get rid of your eye and have only one eye or no eyes than to find yourself on the wrong path away from God's good path. And then he continues in sort of customary rabbinic exaggeration and rabbinic hyperbole. If your hand causes you to stumble, if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better to enter life maimed than to find yourself headed on the wrong path. Now, notice again that what Jesus says is there's this action that the commandment is about, but Jesus says really the problem starts a whole lot earlier. So even before anybody has a one-night stand with somebody else or cheats on their spouse or something like that, something has gone wrong when even me looking at somebody else becomes a matter of lust, becomes a matter of using them, of objectifying them. And notice here, just like the commandment about murder, Jesus says, yeah, the actual act of murder, the actual act of cheating on your spouse, that's bad enough, but something's gone wrong a whole lot earlier, then that's where the relationship breaks down. And God's intention is that we live in relationship with one another in ways that are mutual and just and righteous. In other words, in ways that treat people like people rather than objects. If I'm upset at you and don't like you and I let hate sort of fill my heart, it's really easy for me to treat you like you're a non-person, like you don't matter. And it makes it then an awful lot easier for me to just kill you because you don't matter anyway. Same thing with adultery, right? The moment I stop seeing another person, someone I'm married to, or somebody else who maybe there's an attraction to, when I see that person as an object who's just here for my gratification, man, it becomes an awful lot easier to use them rather than to honor them as a human being made in the image of God. Notice how, like, this core idea is that people actually are made in the image of God. And you treat people, everybody, in every kind of relationship, as if they are of infinite worth. Now, notice one other thing Jesus does, because we church folks sometimes get this all turned on its head. Jesus says, if you look at somebody lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. Now, notice here, Jesus puts the onus, the responsibility, on the person looking at other people in the world. You won't find Jesus shaming people for saying, well, they're dressed too provocatively. Sometimes churchy folk, we get real upset about this. Well, the problem is if so-and-so wouldn't dress the way they do, if so-and-so wouldn't have dressed in a way that invited people to take advantage of them. Whoa, that is not how Jesus frames it, right? Jesus knows in the culture in which he lived, Men are treated like they're the ones who got the power, right? They're the ones who basically regard the women around them as property, the property of their fathers, the property of their husbands. And Jesus says, whoa, no, you have to treat other people, including women, as though they are of infinite worth, made in the image of God. So Jesus doesn't say, the way to solve this problem is just don't let women dress in any way that it could possibly be provocative to somebody else. Don't let them wear anything that could be alluring, because the problem is the men can't handle themselves. Jesus tells the men, you handle yourselves, okay? Treat people like they are people, not objects that you can use. Which means it's not about how much skin is showing or how tightly something is worn on the human body. I mean, after all, in the beginning of the story, in the creation story, the first human beings are naked, and it's not a problem. Nakedness isn't the problem, at least not fundamentally, not in our creatureliness. The problem isn't that God made human beings naked, and then God goes, oh my goodness, they're going to get into so much trouble, I have to invent clothes for them. When we start using one another, when we start throwing each other under the bus because of the fruit that the snake starts telling us about, when we start treating one another as objects for our gratification rather than somebody else of infinite worth who is to be honored and respected, well, something goes wrong. So Jesus says the problem isn't we should all go around wearing very long sleeves and shapeless, formless robes. The problem is, how do I treat other people around me? In positive ways and in negative ways. How do I not let hatred get into my heart? But also, how do I not view somebody so favorably, so attractively? Oh my goodness, that I then treat them like they're an object that I can take advantage of. People aren't consumer products for me to use and then dispose of. That says something beyond even our relationships of marriage. It says something about how I treat everybody, that nobody is there just to be an object for my gratification. And nobody is just throwawayable. Nobody is disposable. Jesus is going to come back to that idea a little bit later on, too. And the point of what Jesus has to say is, the core central idea is, people are of infinite worth, so treat them like that in every relationship of your life. The problem isn't how much skin somebody is or isn't else showing. It's about, how do I look at them as made in the image of God? Which goes all the way back to creation, all the way back to how God has made us from the beginning as infinitely valuable, and because of that, worthy of treating with dignity and respect in every area of our lives. So as you step out into the world today, pay attention to how you watch other people, how you see, how you experience other people, not ignoring them and pretending they're not there, disposable that way, but also not treating other people like they're there just for your gratification too. So we'll wade into further territory next time here on Flicker. Bye.